As oil prices have skyrocketed higher this year, what is deep value investor Warren Buffett from Berkshire Hathaway doing? He's buying more, betting more on sustained high energy prices. What in particular is he buying? We're talking about Occidental Petroleum, OXY stock, where he already has a sizable bet with preferred and warrants over $10 billion, closer to now $15 billion. He's adding to this bet, suggesting that not only have oil prices gone up, but he suspects that at current prices, Occidental Petroleum is a interesting, potentially even compelling value, and that arguably by buying more around current prices, that he suspects that high oil prices are here to stay. And so if this is your first time tuning in, my name is Daniel. You're watching Unrivaled Investing. This is a no-hype, mission-focused channel trying to find you exceptional companies and unrivaled investments. In full disclosure, this is not financial advice, and at the time of this video publication, I did not own stock in Berkshire Hathaway or Occidental Petroleum. And so just a few days ago, Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway disclosed they've purchased nearly 30 million additional shares of Occidental Petroleum. OXY is the ticker. And so with Occidental shares rocketing higher, this likely represents an additional, let's say, $1 billion to $1.5 billion bet for Berkshire. Now, you might think that that's not that much, but then you need to understand there's a history here. Previously, Buffett invested $10 billion in Occidental Petroleum to help them finance their takeover of Anadarko Petroleum back in 2019. And in typical Buffett deal-making fashion, he got a sweet deal. And Berkshire invested around $10 billion into this new preferred stock that Berkshire exclusively got that paid 8% interest and included warrants with the right to purchase up to 80 million shares of Occidental at an exercise price of around $62.50. This price was subsequently adjusted in Berkshire Hathaway's favor to 84 million shares that they can get with the warrants at $59.62 per share. This is because of an anti-dilutive provision with the preferred. I can talk about that, for those that are interested. Maybe I'll share that in the exclusive Unrivaled Investing server. But this option alone, this warrant, represents a $5 billion investment option in addition to the $10 billion in preferred. So while Buffett's bet originally didn't look that great with Occidental Petroleum, as OXY and pretty much all oil stocks took this huge hit as higher oil prices, declined significantly because of this collapse with COVID. And keep in mind, he's been betting with Occidental Petroleum that he thought higher oil prices were going to happen. He pretty much called that out, said that verbatim, but that didn't happen at first because of the impact with COVID. At one point, you were even looking at negative oil prices, but now Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway's bet on Occidental Petroleum is firmly turning around as energy prices are going parabolic in response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Year-to-date oil prices are up now over 60%. And this gets us to this past week where Buffett and Occidental Petroleum filed a 13G. 13Gs are for major filers, 5 to 10% of a company, with the SEC, with Berkshire Hathaway claiming ownership of around 114 million shares. Now, this does include the 84 million shares in the unexercised warrants that he got with that $10 billion preferred investment. Now, all in, this represents an around 11.2% ownership interest. So going back to this, seeing him disclose this 113 million shares, this is a step up because this means he was buying around 30 million shares in the market very recently. So this makes investors wonder, should you buy now that Buffett's not only just sticking with his bet, he's adding to it, to his already, let's say, $15 billion nominal position, because you have this $10 billion preferred. Management will have the right to buy that back, I believe, around 2029. That's still going to pay Buffett, in Berkshire Hathaway 8% a year, but he is buying more of the common now. He does have that option, that $5 billion option at $60 a share to invest $5 billion at around $60 a share. But now he's buying even more, let's say adding in an additional $1 billion. And so as we consider valuing Occidental Petroleum, OXY stock, let's first understand that before energy prices recently went parabolic, they were doing just fine. They generated around $8 billion in free cash flow. They were using that primarily to pay down the debt from these acquisitions. And so while the majority of their profits come from international production of oil and gas, you can see most of it's domestic, some of it's international, but most of their profits come from oil and gas production. They do have around 30% of their 2021 profits from chemical and midstream segments, which, you can see oil and gas around $4 billion of their profits, whereas these other segments represented the other, let's say $1.5 to $2 billion. So all in, looking at segment profit around $6 billion in 2021. But the reality is, looking at 2021 results are looking in the rearview mirror. This is backwards looking, and we live in a whole new world now. I keep repeating this point. I just did a whole video on this very point, and one of the main takeaways is that investors need to adapt to this new reality. And this reality, as you're potentially seeing Buffett doing here, is saying, yeah, I think higher oil prices are here to stay. I'm leaning into my Occidental Petroleum bet. So why is he doing that? Does that mean it's cheap even as Occidental has rallied? And so you look at Occidental and you see what management's calling out here. And they're saying, look, for every $1 change in the barrel price in West Texas Intermediate price, that's another $205 million in annualized cash flow that they could potentially getting. So you look at the year-to-date price change from $76 per barrel to $124. This might imply, basic math, that change times by 205, that might imply around $10 billion in additional cash flows. Now, keep in mind, I am not an expert on Occidental Petroleum, but this is a very back-of-the-envelope approach to saying, wow, this could suggest, based on what management's saying, that while they did around, let's say $8 billion in free cash flow in 2021, you might be looking at a business doing, potentially 15, maybe even closer to 20 billion in free cash flow in the next year, just based on the current oil prices that have gone parabolic. So that does raise the question of like, well, wait a second, if this is maybe a systemic or bigger problem, could oil prices go even higher? Could they do even more in free cash flow? So that is something to think about. I don't consider myself an expert at all in Occidental Petroleum, just starting to learn the setup because, I am interested in tracking what Warren Buffett's doing, but it does strike me as super interesting. Based on the diluted shares outstanding plus Berkshire's 84 million in warrants, you're looking around 1 billion and 42 million shares outstanding. Let's say currently, Occidental Petroleum stock price is around $60 a share. That's a $63 billion market cap. Well, management is likely to use this boom free cash flow, 15, let's say to 20 billion in free cash flow to pay down debt. Their goal, at least in the near term, was to get net debt to $20 billion. That's, let's say, another 7 billion from where they currently are. And so if Oxy gushes 15 to 20 billion dollars in free cash flow at the current economic realities of energy prices based on this new energy reality, even with the stock up significantly at, let's say, a $60 billion market cap, that is still 3 to 4 times free cash flow multiple. So no wonder Warren Buffett is interested, excited about this. He's clearly looking at this. And let's just think about this for a second. A company at 3 to 4 times free cash flow, if they say, yeah, we're going to up more, we're going to allocate more of our free cash flow to expanding our production and, expanding our reserves. So that's a possibility. So maybe that 3 to 4 isn't exactly right. But still, if you say it's 4 to 5 times free cash flow, because they're actually going to be reinvesting some of that in the business, that does imply that they could be returning that cash to shareholders. And so if you start thinking of it as, yes, they have to, invest in the business, and yes, they might be paying down some debt, but then it might be from a shareholder perspective, 5 times free cash flow. And that starts getting interesting, because then you're saying, well, wait a second, from a shareholder perspective, that effectively means a 20% return. 1 divided by 5, 20% potential return to shareholders. Could they buy back, let's say, 20% of the stock this next year based on this current economic reality? And the reality is, what if oil prices continue to go parabolic? Could you see, free cash flows for Occidental Petroleum go even higher, in which case maybe this does trade at, let's say, 2 to 3 times free cash flow? Could they buy, let's say, 30% of the shares outstanding if prices stay, where they are? So this is, I think, the dynamic that Warren Buffett's leaning into. After all, he is that deep value, traditional value investor saying, hey, let's buy with real cash flows. And so no wonder Warren Buffett's buying more. No wonder why he's smiling here. I love to see it. If you enjoyed this video talking about, Warren Buffett's latest purchase, with Occidental Petroleum, leaning into his bet, arguably leaning into the new economic realities of oil prices, please make a point of hitting that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. And if you're interested in joining a community of fellow investors looking to learn and trying to find exceptional companies, you might want to consider Unrivaled Investing. I post, we have an exclusive Discord channel. So once again, that's at unrivaledinvesting.com. Click join the journey. I'm posting on a regular basis, interacting with the Unrivaled Nation. So once again, if you enjoyed this video, please make a point of hitting that thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much for tuning in.